Howdy folks. Today we're speaking about succulents and cacti and a whole slew of plants. Today we've got Jay Arredondo with us of Desert to Tropics Nursery. You do primarily wholesale and landscape supplier.
Right, for wholesale cactus and succulents.
Wonderful, and you're out in?
We're out at East Austin in Del Valley.
What is a succulent?
Succulent is a plant that can hold moisture.
Okay.
And that can be a stem succulent. The plant holds the water in the stem. Or it can be a leaf succulent where the water is held in the leaf.
They've evolved their strategy as water conservation, and they're sticking it somewhere within, their physiology, so to speak.
Sure. And the effort there is, they're generally growing in dry climates, so they want to hold on as much moisture as possible. All plants have pores on their skin, and the succulents have a reduced number of pores, so they release less water during the day. During the hottest parts of the day, their pores are closed.
The great thing about succulents is you can use them outside, inside, so let's try to hit both of those. So outside, what are the things we would want to think about if we were wanting to add some succulents to our landscapes?
Sure. Well, for sure, one of the main considerations is drainage. And so here in this area, a lot of the landscapes are flat.
Right.
And so which case you would either want to take out some soil or maybe even make a raised bed. Or if you're on a hill, then you have the hill slope to be able to offer some drainage there. But in the case of there being little drainage, whether it be just clay soils, flat soil, just compact soils, we can do a raised bed, and you can do that with, with landscape timbers, dry stack rocks, even mortared rocks, make an actual bed, and then you can pretty much put anything in that type of setting, with the right drainage.
Is there a specific type of soil and arrangement would you want to, if you're going to do a raised bed or even putting something in the bed in the ground, would you want to import some type of soil, and would you want to put a drainage aggregate underneath that?
Well, you could certainly put an aggregate base under that to help for the drainage. A number of nurseries around Austin that sell bulk soils often have kind of a garden mix that has a lot of native components in it. Okay. And you can use that specifically, for like larger beds, smaller beds. Then you can kind of amend it a little different, because that garden soil tends to dry out a little bit much, and it kind of gets a little hard itself, but it works really well for large beds.
So how deep would that media, would you want that?
For the strict garden mix that you can find as bulk soil, you would want to go at least 8 inches.
Each of these species require different light conditions, though, right?
For sure. So we have some cactus here, some agaves, and of course a number of different succulents. Now, the cactus, agaves, and some of the more native type plants, they can take an all-day full sun exposure. Some of the succulents here, of course, that we have in these small pots, they like a little bit of afternoon shade. You can make a morning bed, an afternoon bed, an all-day bed.
And then with outside, we've talked about these are water conservative plants. Let's say we put in the bed, we've got our plants there. How are we going to keep them alive? What about watering?
They do need water. So on any dry, average week, can give once a week watering.
Once a week
is sufficient. Okay. Wintertime can just about hold back fully, and if it's going to rain outside, then we can just let the rainwater take care of it. And so for the water needs, they would just need it when they're dry. Even more specific, they don't need it weekly or every 3 days. Just something to give them some moisture so that they can keep their leaves full, the roots alive, and so they don't dry out to the point where the roots just dry rot.
So I've definitely killed a lot of succulents. I'm guilty of that, and overwatering. Is there a tool or something that kind of helps you? Because I know some people say the first inch or so, but if you're coming at this as a newbie, is there some sort of trick that really help you understand, okay, the soil's dry enough I should?
Sure. Well, I mean, just using even a stick, if there's a tool for or sensing water moisture to whatever depths,
Okay.
can certainly use one of those. They don't change too much if they're dry, so it's really kind of one of those things. It's hard to tell if the soil's wet or moist, so
Right.
the tool does come in handy. And,
Okay.
and once you get a rhythm with how much water your garden's taking, you can kind of guess when it needs water. You don't have to constantly be checking it.
Okay.
And it's just kind of a rhythm with with
Okay.
plants. And
Cold weather. What do we need to cover them?
some of them are cold hardy, and I can go through which ones I brought here today that are
Sure.
cold hardy. But what I do and what I have in my bed, which is a mix of hardy and non-hardy, is I just cover it, and
Okay.
it's about a 12 by 20 bed. It's
Okay.
not too big where frost cloth works amazing, and
Okay.
it's real easy to just drape over. It still lets light through. It does let water through, but that's not a big deal. If you can just
Right.
keep the wind shear off, or even if it's freezing rain or ice, or if you can just keep that off, it's taken even our greenhouses. We'll even put frost cloths in the greenhouse to avoid using burning propane.
Oh,
And
okay.
we
Okay.
can get to 25 or even 20, and there's no damage whatsoever. Know your plant as to its cold hardiness. If it's
Right.
not, then you just want to spend a little extra time, which will really pay off, because each year they come back, they should be more robust.
And then, are there any sort of pests or any other sort of little housekeeping that you need to watch for? Because
Well-
living in Central Texas, we
There's a
sort got
lot of
them all.
bugs here, but for the succulents, what insects or bugs that seem to like them are mealy bugs.
Okay.
And they kind of get on everything, but they
Right.
really like the succulents. And so if your bed's clean to begin with, the infection of mealybug is very nominal. Of
Right.
course, then you're going to have flying bugs,
Sure.
grasshoppers or other chewing insects. But for mealybugs, let's just kind of talk about that for a sec. They're really soft-bodied insects, so you can actually just mechanically, physically pick them off, or
Right.
you can spray them with a soap and oil
Okay.
solution.
Okay.
And for the other insects, I can't say what to do about your, grasshoppers. We haven't had that problem.
Right.
Maybe nominal, but
Right.
we don't really have a big problem with
No,
that here.
I
But it's
definitely-
mealybugs,
right.
scale,
Yeah.
or what's the other one? Aphids. And
Okay.
aphids, you can kind of treat aphids like mealybugs.
Okay, I'm not going to do a 12 by 20 bed, but I want to bring some of this wonderful color and
Sure.
variety inside. How would you go about setting up a container with some succulents?
First, I would, of course, choose a container.
Right.
And it can be a low container, wide, or even tall. And if it's a tall one, you might want to fill it with some kind of, I wouldn't say put gravel or aggregate in there, because it'll
Right.
just be really heavy. But
Right.
if you can get some styrofoam peanuts, maybe
okay.
recycled, or something of that nature, you can pack it halfway, and then it'll give you plenty of airspace down there.
Maybe
and,
that's the only thing those are good for besides packing.
it's a good repurpose. And then so you can pick, what I would do is I'd pick, a variety of shapes, heights, and color and textures. And so then you can either just put one in there,
Right.
or you can put all of these in there. But what's going to happen is eventually it's going to grow. It'll
Right.
outgrow the pot. And that looks really nice, because some of them will drape over and just maybe even take on a new shape.
We've got some here, if you want to talk specifically about these, because these are really beautiful, and you're talking about growth habits. So it seems like we've got some
Sure.
vertical height, we've got a little bit of a sprawler here, and some others.
Sure. So what I would do is, if I'm going to use all of these, I would put the taller ones closer together.
Okay.
And these are a bit green, but you can change it up on the color with adding some different colors and textures. And so this is just an example here,
Right.
and trying to shoehorn 5 of these in here. It will turn out
Yeah, that
with
looks
setting it in
beautiful.
just right, you know, you can get sort of this effect right over here on that.
Right.
And another neat thing to do with them, oftentimes when you fill it up with soil, you'll just see, you know, a dark color of dirt. You can use like a colored gravel,
Right.
a colored mulch
Right.
over the top, and it really gives it a nice cleaned up effect.
And
on the
obviously
top.
you would take them out of the pots when we were doing this.
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah, we would definitely take them out, and that way they can have free root roam, and with that, you know, the roots over here that have been confined over in this part,
Right.
they can just kind of grow all together and help each other out. Because say this one might not need as much water as this one, or
Right.
vice versa. And so if you have one of them that's pulling out more water than the others, it'll help overall dry the
Sort
pot
of
out.
regulate. Okay.
It'll help dry the pot out because you don't want them to sit on wet soil.
We had a lot of viewers ask that with these guys, if one of them flowers, then they're going to die.
Well, that might be limited to the agaves.
Okay.
These flower, all of these flower. Now, what will happen with some of them that do flower is they, like this Kalanchoe here, it'll flower from the center. It'll
Right.
send up a long stalk,
Right.
and it won't die once the flower dies. What happens is it will terminate the growth from that center point,
Okay.
and then the lateral shoots will push out new heads, and so you'll actually multiply your plant from that original one.
Great. And then that might even give you opportunity to spread it out if you want a little
Right.
bit.
Yeah. Of course. Then, you know, as it overgrows, some of this stuff might get, you know, lanky or tall or hang over, or just maybe it's just getting too big. You know, you can certainly take clippings, you know, off of these,
Right.
and it's still viable there. You know, you can restart that. Even this, you can, if this starts to spill over, we can
Right.
take little pinches of that and restart in another container.
Wow.
Same for this. We can do cuttings with all of these succulents here. You can do cuttings by division.
And if you divide those, do you need to let them heal in, dry out a little bit before
Right.
you
You
put
want
them
to
in?
wait at least 2 or 3 days before you replant it, because on this wet cut right here,
Right.
oftentimes fungus can get in there and it'll just rot the whole thing out. So you
Okay.
want to let it scab over, and then you can plant them.
Okay. Well, Jay, thank you so much for coming today. This is highly informative. You've got a wonderful selection, and it's truly beautiful. And again, succulents, what can't they do? Highly flexible.
Entirely.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, next, Daphne will be coming up with garden tips.